Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new malicious compliance stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
The first one is titled, "Give Karen what she asks for, not what she wants." I was working for a well-known warehouse membership-only retail company about 6 or 7 years ago as an AM stocker. Their standard policy is to rotate managers every so many years. We got this one which a whole manager, who allegedly pulled the gender card to get promoted, and she really acted like the type, just to give you an idea of the type of person I'm talking about. A serious mega Karen. Among all kinds of new rules she was making up out of nowhere to presumably show dominance over us and our supervisors was a rule, implemented immediately, that all cardboard from stocking had to go on these 2 by 1 meter long orange flatbed carts instead of in regular shopping carts. Keep in mind we started at 4 AM and that I was stocking the liquor section on the other side of the warehouse from the cardboard hole, and all my cardboard was small and didn't stack. This rule didn't work for me and I just wasn't having it. I started my tasks and started chucking my cardboard in a cart anyway. Wah came by to remind me to use a flatbed. I calmly and rationally explained and demonstrated why it didn't work for me. She said to do it anyway. So picked up the cart full of cardboard and placed it on the flatbed sideways and absolutely filled the bastard until it was taller than I was by wedging huge sheets of cardboard in the sides and filling the middle with the small stuff. Skip forward 2 hours when I'd left this absolute monstrosity out during lunch and I was coming back. Wah is yelling into her walkie-talkie for my supervisor, Andy, to come back and look at what I'd done. I was in the next aisle straightening something and trying not to laugh out loud. Andy comes back and he's visibly trying not to laugh while Wah screams about writing me up. He calls me over and I just calmly say, "Well, it's on the flatbed, I don't see the problem." Wah storms off and my manager didn't write me up. That was definitely one of my most satisfying days working there. The next one is titled, "Was told I had an 8.5 hour shift and not to leave early, so I started working for only 8.5 hours. I work as a supervisor at a manufacturing plant, and I was hired for an 8-hour shift as the nighttime supervisor. As soon as I started, they changed, and said they really considered the shift to be from 11 PM to 7:30, so they would need it to be 8.5 hours. I'm salaried, there wasn't much I could do, and it wasn't a big deal, so I said okay. As I get into a groove working there, I find out that the second shift supervisor is a train wreck. No one would describe him to me, just saying I had to meet him. He leaves an hour or 2 early from his shift 2 to 3 times a week. Friday nights he leaves the plant at 5:30, and tells them to call him if there are any problems. He calls out, at a minimum, once a week. It's psychotic. Every time he is out, I come in at around 8 PM to cover the last 3 hours of his shift and my full shift. At least once a week, I just do it. I figure the company is going to deal with it, but as time passes, they obviously aren't. Structurally, the company is just as bad as him. Infighting, rivalries, backstabbing, all of that, but I stay on nights so I don't see it much. Then Sarah starts as my boss. I actually have 2 bosses, which is how every successful employee works. Sarah is a nightmare. Sarah wants me to work 11 to 11 on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday and 11 to 10 on Friday. I dig in my heels, document like crazy, and after a couple months of harassment, HR actually backs me up and she has to stop. But now Sarah is angry, and she sees me leaving at 7:15 one morning after coming in 2 hours early. She sends an email clarifying our time expectations. Second shift train wreck calls in that night, so I come in at 8, and the next morning, Sarah sees me leave at 7:10. I get an email saying she is coming in early to talk to me, and when she shows up, I'm getting a formal warning for my early departures, going into my personnel file. I've never been written up in my life. During the meeting, with HR in attendance, she said I am expected to be there for my 8.5 hour shift. I made sure that the expectation was on record for an 8.5 hour shift, which HR documented. The next week, the second shift supervisor is out 2 days. After the first day, Sarah asks me the next morning why I didn't come in early, as there were problems on his shift, and I said I fulfilled my 8.5-hour shift, and I'm not responsible for his. They had to hire a contractor at $125 an hour to cover all of his missed time, which amounted to 19 weeks this past year. Eventually they hired a fourth supervisor at $85,000 per year to cover his gaps. Sarah got demoted, and I only ever work 8.5 hours. The next one is titled, "Was asked to not speak unless asked to, so I did or rather did not." This story starts a month or so before the March of this year, let's calls that BC. I had just joined a precision stampings company for an internship, and what they basically manufactured was washers, shims and spacers from cold-rolled steel. They used about 34, 60 to 150 ton mechanical presses and had specific dies for each part. To make it simple, they had glorious punching machines with different sizes holes to punch. I had a manager above me whom I reported to, and he was basically a work of art in his own way. Regularly ignored chain of command, carried himself like the king of the castle, regularly demeaned jobs of people below him, and had a blatant disregard for safety. He looked after the whole production, and I guess it is normal for people in top positions to get their heads stuffed with the wrong stuffing. I judged this pretty early on and never got in his way and did what I was told. Now little intern me was learning the basics and little things about everything, and spent most of my time on the shop floor watching operators do their job and study each process and the tools. The tools were unique punches for a specific part and couldn't be replaced easily. Now BC, it was normal for customers to give urgent orders with deliveries to the tune of 2 to 3 days as compared to the usual 2 to 3 months. This one customer, let's call them GG, a major automobile spare parts manufacturer, had the habit of doing just that, and our company manufactured the part within a few hours and always delivered on time. Because of this, the customer always stuck to us. During the first few days of my internship, the order dropped and I got to see the turmoil needed to reach the deadline in 2 days. I watched every step of the process and saw it through the end till dispatch. Now it so happens that an experienced operator had just joined our company and didn't have an idea of the little things of the workings here. He got to work on the part, and after he was done he removed the tool and had no idea about the designated place for the tool to be kept. I told him about the racks with numberings for each unique tool to be kept. Meanwhile, I get down to work and forget about it. He comes a few minutes later and tells me that he couldn't find the exact place for the tool and hence kept the tool in a place, equivalent to keeping a book behind a shelf, for the time being until he tells someone puts it in the right place. Fair enough. Then something happened a few days later and we went into a lockdown. Jump to after something happened in a country to cause lockdown, let's call that AC. The company has been closed for about 2 months and we were working on about 30% of the original workforce, which was mostly machine operators. I had just graduated from my engineering and was looking for a job. They laid off some people in top positions, and as a result, I got promoted to the position of production supervisor. Basically, they needed someone who knew everything about the processes and production timings of operators, which we most definitely not me, but I came for a cheap price and hence bippity boppity a wild op appeared. I tried my best to live up to it and took me about a week to get used to the pace. The manager kept bypassing me to contact the operators and have them orders without me knowing, which caused a lot of confusion. One day, that is the day before yesterday, he held a meeting to decide the production schedule that we were going to follow for the rest of the month. I don't know why the meeting was held, because the production planning department gives us the schedule every week. So I say just that in the meeting. I regret waking up that day. He felt undermined in front of the production staff, I guess, which caused him to just go off on me. Scolded me for interrupting my senior and talking out of turn and not knowing enough about the company to even talk in a meeting. Also to keep my gob shut and open it only when asked to. Fair enough. Guess I was just there to look after the small jobs. The meeting finishes and I keep out of his way for the rest of the day. Just before my shift gets over, GG company drops the purchase order for their part. I saw it, read it, and as I wasn't qualified enough, decided to send it to my manager. Now company policy dictates you to let me know about overtime at least an hour before my shift gets over. Me being incompetent, forgot to send the schedule to the manager until a few minutes before the overtime deadline just to be safe. I knew the delivery was for 2 days later, so they had to get going early. The manager starts barking orders. Trick me to wait overtime, I refuse, mention the company policy and get scarce from his usual working space. There was some commotion around there, but my shift got over. I go home, sleep, and come back to work the other day knowing that it was going to be a long day with probable double shift for me. I came prepared with the provisions. You people are smart enough, you know where this is going, so here's wrapping it up fast. Before I left, they couldn't find the tool they needed for the job, hence the commotion. The operator who kept it there was fired, and the company, knowing that they did it in bad faith, didn't call him for the location. I come back the next day, they still haven't found it. They have started developing the tool from scratch and had to call in the tool designers. They obviously had no idea that I knew it. We wouldn't be here if my manager had simply asked me. But I was to open my mouth only when asked to. So I didn't tell them. I called the operator and told him to tell the company that he kept the tool in place just in case. The day gets by smoothly for me until lunch, when the manager suddenly sees me. He tells me in working a double shift and I say okay. He didn't ask me about the tool. I said nothing. This was yesterday, by the way. The tool they made breaks down within an hour. The hunt for the old tool begins. Nobody asks me anything. Fair enough. I keep working on the rest of the production line. My first shift gets over. They have looked under every stone in the factory. It's almost midnight. Everybody is tired. My manager hadn't slept since the order came in. Now it's apparent the order wouldn't be completed, but they still keep on searching. Now to the point that I'm writing this in real time. I slept in my office, a nice 6 hours. The manager was too busy to notice me. Woke up and got ready to leave. But decide against it. The delivery was supposed to be at 9:30 a.m. today. It's 3:30 p.m. now. They have told the customer they won't be able to deliver due to lack of raw material in lockdown era. Probably lost a customer. The manager hasn't slept in 2 days. I've completed almost 3 shifts and would be paid double for the overtime. I have just come from the manager's cabin. This is how it went. Me, may I come in, sir? Manager, what do you want? Me, did we complete the schedule, sir? Manager, what does it look like? Me, I guess not. Why though? Manager, were you under a rock? The tool was missing and we broke the new one. Me, if you don't mind me asking, sir, which tool? I haven't gotten used to the nomenclature yet. Manager's TN5386GG, what even have you been doing all this time? All the production supervisors were on the floor looking for the tool. I didn't see you once. Me, you asked me not to speak unless asked to, sir. And if I'm not wrong, is that the tool that's on that place? Manager, what even are you talking about? We don't keep it there. Me, well, that's obvious that we didn't keep it in the usual place, isn't it, sir? Should have asked me. Manager, I don't think you even understand what's going on here. That must be a different tool you misjudged. I'll show you what tool that is. We go over to the place, and sure enough, it's the same tool. He immediately started yelling and calling for some people, and I make myself scarce. Safe to say that I might get fired, but I lived this moment and I have a college admission in my hand. The next one is titled, "You Have to Salute Your Superior Officer." Not my story, but my dad's. Back in the day, there was a mandatory military service of 15 months for all male residents in Germany. My dad enrolled in an university and dodged the service at first, but after he finished his studies he was ordered to enlist in the Bundeswehr, so he had to go. You could skip military service on ethical reasons, but you then had to do a social service instead, which lasted even longer. Him being a former university student, he was about 6 years older than most of the other recruits and even a bit older than most officers in basic training. He didn't take the military service seriously at all. Here are 2 stories of malicious compliance that made his superior officers hate him by his account. 1. He was ordered to do door duty. He was basically sitting in a glass box, letting anybody in the barracks through a sliding glass door by pressing a button with his right hand. This is important, as it was impossible to salute using your right hand and let anyone in at the same time. One morning, he was chewed out in front of everyone for saluting with his left hand. This is apparently a big no in German military. Cue malicious compliance. This day, a pretty high-ranking officer, I think 2-star general or something, I don't quite remember, happened to be visiting. The guy walked up to the door, staring at my dad, expecting to get a salute. And that's what my dad did. The guy returned the favor and slammed head first into the door he wasn't paying attention to. After that day, people on door duty didn't have to salute anyone before letting them in. From what my dad told me, the general was a good sport about it after he got the explanation why my dad didn't press the button for him. There was simply no way of achieving a proper salute and reaching the button at the same time. 2. There were very strict uniform codes. Under no circumstances was a soldier to be caught outside the barracks with an incomplete uniform. While driving a vehicle, a soldier was not allowed to wear a hat. This day, it was very rainy. A superior officer ordered my dad to drive him to the post office to deliver a load of very heavy and very large packages. The malicious bastard that my dad was at the time, he left his hat at the barracks, since he wasn't allowed to wear it while driving. At the post office, he got the order to carry everything inside. As you might have already guessed, he refused to even exit the vehicle, since he wasn't allowed to step outside with an incomplete uniform. The officer, realizing what my dad did, got really angry and started yelling at him, but there was nothing he could do about it. He couldn't give him his hat, since officers had a different one from the normal soldiers. He couldn't discipline him, since he technically only ordered him to drive him to the post office, which did not require bringing a hat. The poor dude had to carry all of that stuff on his own, which, to his credit, he did. He never ordered my dad to do any deliveries for him after that. This is how I recall the stories. A few details might be a bit off since I was told them years ago. But yeah, it seems that my dad was a pretty annoying recruit. He just didn't want to be there, and it showed. The next one is titled, A Key for a Key. I started working at a retail store a few months ago. Much of our merchandise is locked in display cases, and employees were expected to sign out and sign back in any key and radio at the beginnings and ends of shifts, respectively. I've been the only person at work who cares about precautions, so I tried to always take the same key every day, in the hopes that no one else was handling it. I signed it out, I signed it back in, day out. One day, at the start of my shift, my key is missing. I checked the log and it wasn't signed out since I'd last returned it the previous day, which meant someone had just taken it, not signed it out, and never returned it. It hasn't been back since, so it's quite gone. I had previously mentioned to management that the key control system was lacking, and that keys were going missing. No record, no oversight, no apparent concern. Management shrugged with indifference, and made a quip about taking employee keys in exchange for work keys. 1. I'm not willing to part with either my house or car key to anyone I don't trust. 2. I don't want other employees handling my own personal keys with their plague rat hands. Management eventually implemented the key exchange, and now comes the malicious compliance. I had a key ring with a bunch of extra keys from old hobby locks that had long since been lost, or keys of otherwise little significance. These keys are on several key rings, on a carabiner. I loaded as many key rings as I could fit, then I added the biggest padlock I have, then slapped an industrial magnet on the shackle of the lock, then added a lump of wrought iron to the mix to increase the weight to somewhere around 3 pounds. 3 pounds of keys, locks, and just metal. I handed over the pointless keys in exchange for a work key, and the heft was met with at least a Jesus from management. The second day I went to ask for a key, management looked at my key monstrosity as I approached, said never mind, and gave me a key. No one has been asked for keys since, to my knowledge, and there is now no key control whatsoever. Certain keys are designated management only, but that hasn't stopped anyone from taking those keys. What even are employee handbooks? The next one is titled, Don't Get Angry with My Kid When He Does What You Challenged Him to Do. Many years ago, my oldest child was in junior high. He took a computer class his first year in junior high. His teacher was interesting. On parent-teacher night, she announced to all the students and parents that if a child in her class could hack the school's filters, net nanny, they would get an automatic A for the entire year in the class. She even had this printed up on handouts she gave us parents. My oldest child can be a challenge. I never wanted to be one of his school teachers. He just thinks of the most random things to do, and then does them without thinking of consequences. Thankfully he has mostly grown out of this. I could tell that my son was going to take her up on this challenge. He was good enough with computers that I was pretty sure he could do it. So I warned her that the school district did not want students hacking the net nanny. Especially not my son, who knows what he would find that I didn't want to know about. Less than 2 weeks later, I am called up to the school on very little notice. My son was going to be expelled. That was all the info I had before I got to the school. I had a feeling it was about the computer class, so I brought in the handout the teacher gave out on parent-teacher night. I was right. He hacked the net nanny successfully, and because of this, the school was going to expel him. Permanently. I had quite the chat with the principal. He was completely shocked that the teacher had challenged the students this way, but claimed it didn't matter because the school had rules that my son should have known. He was flabbergasted when I called the superintendent of schools for our city. He was more shocked when I chatted with him on a first-name basis. It might have been a Karen thing to do, but messing with my kids brings out my mama bear. Son did not get expelled. He didn't get punished in any way. Mostly because the teacher was an absolute idiot. I later learned this was not the first time she issued this challenge, or the first time a student was able to do it. She had been warned not to do it again ever, and she ignored that. They had a new teacher in under a week. Because you are just not smart enough to teach school if you openly challenge kids to hack the school's filters. The last one is titled, More Fries. Okay. Last year I had a part-time job at McDonald's. It was fun, close to university and in a modern style. All good until I was transferred at a nearby McDonald's, and that one was in the classic style, with drive-through. I had like 3 months experience, and the manager, let's call her Lisa, was a witch who screamed at everyone for no reason. As I started my shift, she called me to fry fries. All good until she saw a group of people incoming and rushed at me. She started screaming saying we don't have fries because of me. Obviously lie, I had fries for 10 people and another 15 portions incoming in 2 minutes. She started filling the stove, I don't know the word, she filled full and said, I want fries, make me fries. For the next 30 minutes I had a run full with fries. When she arrived we had like 2 customers waiting in line and my fries holders were full, my stove full. I think I had like 70 plus portions in waiting. I ended dumping more than half of them because there was no one to buy them. At the end of the day she had to explain why she told me to fill the holders with fries. Thanks for listening.